Just I can give you her name.
Hey, Ash. Hey. Hey, okay. I found my notes. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see so many folks from the ward, both here and online. So tonight is a hybrid meeting, so we'll have a curious sort of way to work through the questions both in the room and online. So we'll all be kind and patient with each other as we work through whether there's any tech issues, but it's really nice to have an inclusive space where we can have people join from home and here in person. But I just wanted to say hello. My name is Laine Johnson. I am the councillor for College Ward. It's really nice to see you all here. This is our final town hall of this term of council, which is tremendous. It was a campaign promise that I made back in 2022 because I know that, you know, public engagement often, given some of the constraints that we have post-COVID, a lot more things happen online. And I think it's really important to have this kind of opportunity for a face-to-face connection with residents so that we can meet one another. And we have a very deep bench of city staff here this evening, and we'll have an opportunity to all introduce ourselves just after we sort of set up the space for the day, okay? So I just wanted to start off by doing a land acknowledgement. So we begin by acknowledging that we're gathered on and that the city of Ottawa is built upon the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people who have lived on, cared for, and governed these lands since time immemorial. As we gather for this community town hall, it is important to begin with this acknowledgement, to ground ourselves in the history of this place, and to remind us of our shared responsibility to build relationships rooted in respect, understanding, and reconciliation. We pay respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples whose enduring contributions continue to shape our city and our communities. So for those who are joining online, there'll be a Q&A function for you to submit your questions. And for today, just to give you a sense of how it's going to go, we're going to say, hi, how are you? We're going to learn a little bit about the folks that are joining us today. Then we'll have all staff sort of introduce themselves, because we'll have the opportunity, if you have a specific question, to ask those staff that are responsible for those departments, which is fabulous. And then we'll move through an open Q&A until we run out of time. So you know that this, just so you know that this meeting will be recorded so that it can be shared out after the fact, and also because sometimes we don't have the answers right away. Sometimes we have to go away and do a little digging, and by recording it, it gives us a good opportunity to have a good track record of all the questions that were asked so that we can follow up appropriately, okay? So what I was thinking we could do is just start with a general icebreaker, because I know for some folks this might be their first town hall, and we want to get to know each other in the room. So you don't have to move around, you don't have to handshake anybody you don't know, don't get totally weirded out by it, but we are going to do a quick series of 4 questions where you will have to think about it. Are you prepared to do this? Are you going to manage this? I think you're going to manage very well. So online, we have a poll, I believe. Is that right? So we're going to try and do something cute where they get a poll, but we're just going to raise our hands for these kinds of questions. Okay, are you ready? Okay, so who is here from, and you guys are also more than welcome to answer the questions, okay? And that will be fun too. I actually have a special one for these guys at the end. It's not a quiz, don't worry. So, all right, so who is here from the Bel Air Copeland Park area? Holy moly, so this is good to know, okay? So put your little file folders on and think of all your College Word files. Who's here from Bell's Corners? Very good. Who's here from the Qualicum Queensway Terrace areas? Hello. All right, you got a lot of heavy lifting. You got to bring all this information back to your whole 2 communities, okay? What about Centrepoint? Oh, very good. You didn't have a long way to go. I hope your sidewalks were cleared. If they're not, you got the right person to talk to here. How about Leslie Park and Briar Green? Oh, okay, you've got a lot of work. Hey, oh, okay, very good. Neighbors. And what about City View, Ryan Farm, Crestview? All right, very good. Okay, so we've got a good representation of diversity. What about the poll? Are we good on the poll? Have they completed the poll? We're not sure. Okay, so first technical, oh no, we missed a neighborhood. Oh, Parkway Park is here. Oh my goodness, I apologize. How rude. Oh my goodness, I am so happy to see you. Thank you for coming. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yes. And you know what? We should talk more about that tonight. Okay. So let's talk about that. Let's make sure that you guys get your question answered today. Okay. So next question. If you were on a deserted island, would you rather be stranded with salty snacks or sweet snacks? Okay. So raise your hand if you would rather be stranded with salty snacks. Raise your hand if you would rather be stranded with sweet snacks. Ooh. What do you think? Do you think sweet snacks took it? No? Okay, them's fighting words. All right, so next question. Who was born and raised in Ottawa versus who moved here later in life? So let's start by all the people who were born and raised in Ottawa. Okay. Okay, very good. And who moved here later in life? Wow. Okay, so we've got a lot of globetrotters. We've got a lot of different municipality examples. That's going to be helpful. All right, so now I'm just going to ask a question to you guys, okay? So this is the kind of thing where, okay, just bear with me. You know how to do this. So how many of you have worked for the city of Ottawa for 2 years? 1 year. Let's start with 1 year. Raise your hand if you've worked for the city for 1 year. Just play the game. The question is put. Have you worked for the city for 1 year? Oh boy, this does not fare well. This does not fare well. The IQ test has been failed. Okay, there you go. Okay, so you've worked for the city for 1 year. Put your hand up and keep it up. Okay, that was a compound instruction. I know that's hard. Okay, keep your hand up if you've worked for the city for 5 years. Keep your hand up if you've worked for the city for 10 years. Holy moly. Keep your hand up if you've worked for the city for 15 years. Keep your hand up if you've worked for the city for 20 years. Keep your hand up if you've worked for the city for 25 years. I know. Keep your hand up. Yeah, that's a good question, yes. Keep your hand up if you've worked for the city for 30 years. Keep your hand up if you've worked for 35 years. Keep your hand up if you've worked for 40 years. Whoa! All right. So when I say deep bench, I mean deep bench. These guys have been working for the city. Oh, here's another one. Put your hand up if you ever worked for the city of Nepean. Yeah. All right. So Roger is going to have a lot of questions about Nepean. All right. So that was fun. So the final question I have, and this is going to be a reflection, and it's just a perception. Okay. So don't worry too much about getting it right or wrong. But who believes that they might be some of the youngest people attending today? Put your hands up. Is there anyone here who is younger than 10? We have 2 kiddos younger than 10 in the back. So that's their first town hall. Is it your first town hall? Okay. All right. So we're going to try and make it not your last town hall. Okay. And then who thinks they might be some of the oldest people attending today? Very good. Yeah, you know what? No wrong answer. No wrong answer. It's just a subjective question. But I do this icebreaker because, one, I do want us to try and enjoy ourselves tonight. I do want us to have some fun. I do want us to be curious. But I also want to demonstrate that there's a whole diversity of perspectives and backgrounds in this room. And the challenge with a town hall is that you never know which way the evening's going to go. But we're all showing up here in good faith. And I would anticipate that many of us are going to show up in good faith as well. So I would invite us all to participate with the following sort of expectations for engagement in mind. Can we turn to that slide quick? Sorry, we've got one person sort of doubling up. So essentially the idea is we're going to go around the room with the mic. You know, we're asking you to keep your comments brief because we do have so many folks here and we want to get to as many questions as possible. And some folks might not know what's going on in other neighborhoods. So we will try and keep our comments brief as well. Right, gang? I don't have to, but no, I should. I'm terrible at it though, if you've not been to a town hall before. So we're going to try and keep our comments brief, and we are going to ask you to enter into this conversation with an open mind, because we're going to be able to offer new information and education on subjects, and we might be prepared to understand that some of the questions might be left unanswered today, and we're going to make a commitment to follow up with the questions that we don't have the answers for, so that you're not left stranded with your questions. And we do have magnets out front as well. If you want my email address, you can email my office after the fact if anything comes up. We are going to alternate between virtual and in-person questions, and we're also going to scan for folks that haven't talked yet, if it comes to it, so that we can make sure that there's a degree of fairness and that everybody gets one question. And we're also going to make sure that, you know, we get a range of subjects. So we're going to kind of keep one question per topic as we get through them, and then see where we end up. So we're going to try and get to a diversity of questions. So if you feel like your question or topic has already been chatted about, you know, maybe hold your hand until we're a little later and we can sort of see what we can get to towards the end. How does that sound for everybody? Okay, very good. It was funny, you know, there's been a couple, town halls are tough. They're tough. And I know why politicians don't really like to do them anymore, because they're intense. But I do think that in my experience working with residents of College Ward, I've always been delightfully surprised, and I've been feeling welcome in the spaces that I'm in. And so I'm really looking forward to tonight, and I think we're going to do it again. And so I look forward to being able to engage with you in that spirit. Okay, so I would like to turn it over now to the team, and they're each going to introduce themselves and their subject matter experts quickly so that you sort of get a sense of who's in the room. And then we'll get cracking. Okay? All right. So John, can we start with you?
Hi, everybody. I'm John Buck. I'm the city's chief building official. We regulate new construction for conformance to the Ontario Building Code and other applicable law, i.e. zoning bylaw. Grew up in Bell's Corners, Rocks.
Good evening, everyone. Roger Chapman, Director of Bylaw and Regulatory Services. Speaks for itself. Anything bylaw related, we're usually the enforcers. Not always responsible for the policy of some of those bylaws, so there's other experts around the table, but definitely on the enforcement side.
Hello, everyone. Jake Ravel. I'm the Associate Director with Bylaw and Regulatory Services. I've just kind of come back to Bylaw and really looking at possibly taking over in the future.
Yeah. Look out, Roger. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Chenier. I'm the General Manager of Recreation, Culture, and Facilities. Most of it's obvious. Recreation is the pools and the parks and arenas. The culture is the theaters, the museums, those kinds of things. And the facilities part is really maintenance for all of the city's assets, not just recreation and culture, but fire stations and paramedic posts and daycares and that kind of thing.
My name's Bruce Kenny, a manager, design and construction municipal, so road, water, sewer, bridges. And I work within our infrastructure services group, which also has a design and construction manager for water and wastewater projects, but also for buildings and parks as well. So we are the design and construction group for the city-led projects.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. My name's Richard Holder. I'm the director of the Rail Construction Program. So very happy to be leading a team that launched the successful Trillium Line project last year. We're just getting ready for the East launch in a few weeks, and we'll be getting ready for the launch of the West extension out to Moody and down to Algonquin by the end of next year. I am not from Canada, but my first job in Canada was in Bell's Corner, so I have an affinity.
Hi, I'm Pat Scrimger. I'm also from OC Transpo, where I'm the Director of Transit Customer Systems and Planning, which means service planning, technology, and customer service and strategic things. And I would just like to say it's 25 years and 2 days.
Hi, I'm Troy Charter. I'm the interim general manager for transit services, OC Transpo. So oversee the bus, paratranspo, as well as the rail side of things. Can't say I was a Bell's Corners resident, but I'd say I was Bell's Corners adjacent, Glencairn, Canada. So I spent a lot of time over the years in Bell's Corners. So pleasure to be here.
Evening, everyone. My name's Quentin Levesque. I'm the Director of Roads and Parking Services. My team is responsible for the maintenance of our transportation network. One of our primary functions is winter operations and maintenance. That's the plowing, clearing, material application, and removal of snow from our transportation network. In the summertime, my team's responsibilities are around street sweeping, minor sidewalk repair, and asphalt repair, pothole repair. Also, part of my group is responsible for the operation and maintenance of our paid parking program.
Good evening. My name is Shelley McDonald. I'm the Director of Solid Waste Services. So a shout out to all of you residents who have done a phenomenal job with the 3-item limit. So thank you so much for using our diversion programs. So I have the responsibility for policies such as that, as well as management of our landfill collection, the solid waste master plan that was recently approved, and look forward to your questions tonight.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kirsten Nitcha. I'm the manager of Development Review West with the Planning, Development, and Building Services Department. So the way I explain it is, and I'm also a planner. So my team looks after review and approvals of development applications in this ward, as well as other wards in the Western area. And the way to think about it is you see those big signs that says there's a proposed development, the large white and turquoise city color signs. That's my team. So that's, I guess, what I'm in charge of. And we do have other groups within planning services, so community planning and policy as well. But they're not able to come today, so I'll do my best to answer any questions policy related. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sav Hohen. I'm a traffic assessment specialist working in the traffic services unit. Traffic services. Our unit specifically is traffic investigations and surveys. And we're responsible for reviewing speed limits, speeding concerns, curbside regulations, and its related programs, as well as any traffic signage and pavement markings.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Heidi Kuzno, and I'm the manager of the Traffic Safety and Mobility Branch, where SO's unit is within, and that's within Traffic Services. Traffic Services manages the movement of all goods and people through our transportation network that Quinton's team maintains for us. And then so we're responsible for designing, operating, maintaining all of the various traffic signals and signage and pavement markings. We are responsible for implementing initiatives through our road safety action plan. We are responsible for aiding with the traffic management for various things like through construction projects, through special events like parades or block parties, also for incidents and demonstrations and things like that.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for all donating your time to be here tonight. We really appreciate it. And I just want to introduce my colleague who I've invited here today, Chair of Transportation, or now it's called the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, Councillor Tierney. He's joined us today because certainly some of our questions will be transportation related, as well as public works and infrastructure related. And so he will be able to support any sort of further discussion in terms of policy and planning, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Great. Thank you very much, Laine. And first of all, I'm the Barnacle on Council, 16 years. So I know a lot of the same people around the table. I want to applaud Laine to get all this. I never can get this many people out to mine, so I don't know what you're doing. I did want to mention real quickly a couple of things, why I think this is so personal for me to come and attend and support colleagues. We have very similar issues. I represent an area inside the Greenbelt. It's a challenge. So we've actually, through Laine's leadership, developed a group called the Outer Urban. So we're not suburban, we're outer urban, where we have challenges with crosswalks, lights, and all those different things. At the same time, I was talking to my new friend Pat over here. I'm 6 feet tall, so you may have seen me in the paper lying on some signs that we're going to be putting up soon in the neighborhoods around schools. But they're very large signs, so I deal with a lot of that stuff as well. But we are learning a lot very quickly from the provincial government and a lot of the changes in Bill 60 that have come along. So I take it very personally. I want to find out our staff are working tremendously hard. They're amazing workforce, but they're digesting a lot of the new legislation that really does impact a lot of things around transportation master plan that we're just all discovering across the entire province of 444 municipalities. So I'm here to listen. And then afterwards, like Laine's always in my ear, which is a good counselor, we'll sit down afterwards in the next day or two and digest what this evening holds. And hopefully we can continue this relationship. You got a great representation here in Laine Johnson. Thanks, Laine.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor. All right, well, thank you very much. So I'll just quickly introduce my team as well, who's going to support the day. So we've got Sammy there, who is going to be doing note-taking and some photos here and there. We have Ash, who is going to be supporting the Q&A along that aisle. And we have Heather, who is supporting the hybrid and so far has done an okay job, I guess, given the polls didn't work, but I think you'll work it out, eh? No, I'm joking. And then we have Kelly in the back. Kelly is a new recruit through Youth Ottawa. She is here to support our team. Today is her first observation of the College Board experience, so let's make it a good one. All right, so good. Okay, so what we'll ask is for folks to put up their hands, and we'll come around and we'll circulate with the microphones. We'll go sort of 1, 2, and then virtual, and then we'll just try and get through as many questions as we can in the next hour or so. So does that sound reasonable to everybody? Yes, it does? Okay, so no, okay, so we've got our first question. Very good.
Thank you. This is my first time being at a town hall, and I'll try to keep it brief. So I have my notes here. I just wanted to bring a safety concern on our street. The street is wide and straight, and it's a community safety zone. But with the removal of the speed camera, the drivers obviously started to speed up a little more than they should. Sometimes they go up to 65 kilometers an hour. There are 2 schools on our street, so I was hoping that perhaps we can address this later down the road, and perhaps have some raised sidewalks or extended curbs or something like this that will prevent or help drivers to obey to the speed limit. This is Old Richmond Road in Nepean, and I think it used to be an extension of much busier road, but then it was merged to Moody Drive. But our street is still very straight and very wide. Thank you.
So perhaps Heidi, I'll ask you to jump in on that.
Yeah, sure. So definitely with the removal of the speed cameras, we are definitely still, as Councillor Tierney said, still absorbing all of the impacts of all of that. There is some funding opportunities from the province to do some things in the place of the speed cameras. Right now, we are focusing on getting in the large signs that we've been legislative of having to implement. And then there will be some opportunities for some future funding for some various initiatives on those streets where the cameras were removed. But we are still sort of digesting through the process and the opportunities by which we can secure that funding to implement those various types of measures. Above and beyond the potential funding from the province, there's other city programs too that can work through various traffic calming initiatives, whether through the temporary traffic calming program or the neighborhood traffic calming program that can look at various safety initiatives as well on various streets, depending on their location and whatnot and the context of those streets.
Thank you for the answer. And just politically, you know, that the legislation that the province put through to cancel the speed cameras was very impactful. The city of Ottawa had made big strides, and the road safety action team had taken it as an opportunity to really try and accelerate what investments they could make. My concern remains for our outer urban wards, as Councillor Tierney said, in our mature neighborhoods is another way of sort of looking at it. We don't have the benefit of development charges or other types of investments to get those road safety features. It's always an addition afterwards, right? Because we're kind of upgrading existing roads, which means that those investments generally are on the tax base. And so the city of Ottawa, you know, cannot expect that our tax revenue is going to be able to swell to the extent that that the cameras were offering. The cameras were sort of, if you do a fine or if you do the crime, you pay a fine. But for everyone else, they were not absorbing that price. Now, with the removal of the cameras, it's going to be looking to those law-abiding citizens to also contribute to those safety measures. And I just don't think that's been a fair evaluation by the province. So there's going to be a report coming forward in early next year to sort of get a better sense of what our next steps are. So thank you so much for the question. It's pretty much the top concern of what I hear in my office. Okay, so over to Ash on that aisle. Is there anything there? Not at this time? Okay, what about virtually? Do we have any questions there? Oh, there's hot aisle. Okay, here we are.
Hi, I'd just like to thank you guys for taking your Wednesday evenings to get grilled by the general public. Obviously, I kind of don't want to throw you guys directly in the fire, but obviously I'm here representing a group called Better Transit Ottawa. We are a group that advocates for small improvements to our transit system because obviously with the budget that was passed last year, we cut a lot of services. We cut a lot of money and service from transit, which resulted in lower ridership, higher fares for riders, and overall a worse experience for anyone trying to use transit. I'll be frank, I use transit, but I also own a car, and those cuts have made me ride the bus less. And one of those things that we can do to improve bus service in the interim is having some kind of transit priority measures on priority corridors like Carling, like Baseline. And we obviously we have products in the future like Baseline BRT, like the Stage 2 West Extension, that kind of thing, that are going to improve transit in the West. But obviously those projects are still years away. I mean, Baseline BRT currently has no money that is dedicated to it. The city doesn't have the money to do it. How can we ensure that we're going to see consistent small improvements in transit over time? Because that's the only way that we're going to escape the transit death spiral that we are currently in.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And, I think, at our transit committee meetings, we've been very transparent and candid that we know in terms of our bus service that we need to improve, and that's our goal. But I really appreciate the words that you use, because that's what we're focused on, is making those incremental improvements. We've got quarterly service changes where we're going to be looking at, how can we improve the service across the various wards. We've got, funding set aside in this year's budget. There's a little over $3 million has been set aside for transit priority measures. So we're going to be doing that assessment to see where we can get the best bang for our buck in terms of that. And then we work with our transportation planning colleagues as well as certain, and you mentioned again, those longer, bigger term investments in projects. But, our focus really is on those incremental improvements. And it's a combination of things. We ran into some challenges with, we're still dealing with some sort of post-COVID challenges with supply chain and bus procurements, but service will improve as we get more newer buses, the zero electric emission buses coming in. Service will improve when we get the east extension open and gives us some capacity to free up some resources to focus more back on the bus service. So there's a number of things that we're working on. But to your point, we are 100% focused on that, making those incremental improvements. There's no big aha moment, so to speak. It's really just trying to consistently look at how can we improve quarter after quarter after quarter. And that's what we're focused on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I guess from a College Ward perspective, if you don't mind my adding, so I've been successful in this budget to have some of those transit priority measures be committed to baseline between Valley Stream and Green Bank, so that we can see some of those improvements more quickly, because the 8868 is the third best bounced ridership in the city post-COVID. So it definitely deserves that investment. And I was also very glad to see that one of my number one commitments in my campaign was to see investment for the baseline BRT. And the city of Ottawa has earmarked $73 million to match or to contribute to the baseline BRT when the federal funding comes through, but that money has been set aside in the 2026 budget. So we're now able to say it's not nothing anymore. The city is doing its part, and they have made that commitment to College Ward, as well as all those other wards that would benefit from it. So that's River, I don't know their names, but like Sean Devine's ward, Marty Carr's ward. So we're actually putting up the money in this year's budget, which is a lot faster than I had anticipated. But I think it's through our collective advocacy and our commitment to, transit. And of course, the issue is, just like you buy a car. Of course you do. Of course you do, because you got to get to where you go. And then you sit in traffic forever, and so does the bus. And so people buy cars because they can't stand to sit on a bus in congestion anymore, and we just continue perpetuating the problem. So it is a matter of investment, and it is a matter of trying to do it first before things get so bad. So it is, I've been told by the chair of transit that he thinks it's like a, maybe a 3-year correction that we're still in to try and get all those pieces that you've identified aligned. The crux of it is to not lose the public trust to such an extent in those 3 years that we can't regain it. And that's what I know that our council is focused on, and certainly staff are deeply committed to it. So thank you very much for the question, and thank you for your group's advocacy. Big time. Okay. Ash? Beautiful.
Hi. Hi, my name is John Waters. I'm a retired youth probation officer in the Ontario government, worked over 30 years in corrections. I worked as a probation officer, so you can imagine a few of my cases I'm involved with. My question is for bylaw. My wife and I have been living in this part of the city for over 30 years. We moved here about in 97. And just this past few months ago, and I know Laine is aware of the issue, received a letter from bylaw inserting an allegation that a large item was parked on my driveway, on my lawn, which was not supposed to be. Well, the thing is, I never had anything parked on my lawn. There was someone parked, a neighbor had a boat on their lawn. Another gentleman has his car sometimes parked on his lawn because he has, like me, has some mobility issues, and his wife sometimes helped to bring it up. My concern is, and it just basically is that I got the letter, and actually annoyed me more than he's got. First to find out, like, what the heck is going on here. I read it, and it was basically a complaint that I had something parked on the lawn. I called, referencing the number, and I never received the courtesy of a call back. When I worked in corrections, I was expected to return a call within 1 business day. That was the professional standard. I then basically brought it up to Laine Johnson. And the other thing too as well, I did enforcement. of criminal justice matters primarily. I know bylaw is a bit different category, but still, it's a law enforcement category. If I went to a justice of the peace, I would have to at least confirm the address was legitimate, or if I wasn't available to do so, have the police verify it. But often with high-risk guys, I would have the cops check on my behalf. They have a gun. When I was in probation, I had only a daytimer. So basically, and my concern about that is, okay, again, I'm in the system. I know how to advocate for it. But before I retired, I worked with an organization, which unfortunately the city got rid of, called Crime Prevention Ottawa. And I worked a lot with racialized communities. And a lot of people who basically have a distrust of law enforcement. And I put myself in that category. One thing I worked on was building trust with the racialized, with the newcomer community particularly. And I sort of thought basically from my experience with them, how I would feel if I didn't do anything wrong and I got this letter. And so my question is, why did not someone take a drive by my house and confirm that basically that they were wrong? And because if they came to buy my house, they would have seen that basically it was a neighbor next door. Now what I did is I took the notice, because I knew who they were talking about, and the neighbors and I would get along well. I said to them, hey, look, this is the warning about your boat on your lawn, please move it, and they moved it. But however, left a bad taste in my mouth, because as a professional, I make sure that I have all the information right. And you guys did not have the information right at all. You weren't even in the proper field.
Thanks, sir, for your question. May I ask you, was it a notice of violation or was it an alternate response letter that you received? Okay. So the difference being between a notice of violation and an alternate response letter, when we have 0 priors or 0 calls for an address, before we send an officer out, let's say for front yard parking, we would advise them of this with a letter, basically advising the resident there's a violation, a complaint was received, and as a courtesy, you cannot do this. An error was made, obviously, if you don't park on your front yard, and the letter was sent to the wrong address. But it's not an enforcement action as a notice violation would be. There's no investigation completed. It's basically a complaint was received, 0 priors. As a courtesy, we send out an alternate response letter to advise you of the complaint and the action that you need to take. If a second complaint is received, then an officer will be dispatched to investigate. Fair enough.
Okay, duly noted, and that's great feedback for this team in terms of that alternate response letter. Okay, so now we're going back to this aisle, or where am I? This aisle? Okay, super. Oh, hello.
In my neighborhood, I think it's the best to have sidewalks because in my neighborhood, there's a lot of children that go to a nearby school, and I think it's best to have sidewalks because, well, it's a safer way of transportation for the children in my neighborhood can walk safer to school than usual.
Okay. All right, so thank you very much. So that was a comment to suggest that, you know, how can we get more sidewalks so that kids can get to school? Did you want to sort of talk a little bit about from a transportation planning perspective, Heidi, how that happens? And I can support that as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there are a number of ways that new sidewalks can be implemented on existing streets. The through the city's transportation master plan that is managed by my colleagues in the transportation planning in a different department. They've identified a long list of sort of missing link kind of projects, locations where they want to prioritize, adding sidewalks in order to be in line with our official plan objectives. When streets are being reconstructed, this is another opportunity that we want to take advantage of because it's definitely more cost efficient to add in features as part of that reconstruction. And then so that's another opportunity to add sidewalks as part of the reconstruction and sort of following our complete street policies and our road safety action plan sort of policies of designing our streets differently than we used to 20, 30 years ago. And one of those features is trying to add sidewalks where it's feasible to add sidewalks to sort of improve the benefits for everybody from all ages, all abilities, and sort of improving that accessibility for everybody.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so the Transportation Master Plan started consultations back in 2019, so well before I was elected, and it went through 6 years of consultations, and the final piece was passed in 2025. I invited Chair Tierney here just to talk about sort of how that transportation plan gets revisited and what parts of it are we going to see in the next few years. So would you offer a couple of comments on that?
So like everything, COVID really messed with everyone's life in a big way. So it actually really affected how where you start, your end, and your destination studies take place. And TMP Part 1 really focused on active transportation as a big component of it. And typically we do our TMPs every 4 or 5 years. Unfortunately with COVID, it really affected the timing. There was a major delay. So TMP Part 1, we completed it. TMP Part 2, which is more larger scale projects, more roadways, different things like that, we just recently completed. But we realized we got to go back, and we actually passed a motion to review the TMP yet again from the origin destination studies within the next 2 years because of so many impacts on how things have been rolling out, and like you're hearing about, the provincial government's change in a lot of their policies when it comes to road designs, connectivity between neighborhoods. So, stay tuned. You're going to hear, unfortunately, we're going to go through a whole transportation master plan. I'll call it a 2.0 refresh. 2.0 is a horrible term. Let's pick another term, refresh. Where we're going to go back and reevaluate sooner than wait for 4 years to be able to get to that point. So I just want to add a little context that while we have the TMP, it's this big visionary document that could go forever. At the same time, there is opportunities, I think, that we might see some changes simply because the provincial government's changed so many rules along the way.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so now over to that aisle, and then we'll go to a virtual question. Great.
I guess maybe just a follow up to the thing about sidewalks. I'm like, from a practical sense, is there a list? Is it sorted? If I wanted to know what are the top 5, the bottom 5, like, is my road going to be on the bottom 5? Like, how would I find this? I'm like, you talked about the master plan, but just practically, if I said my neighborhood want a sidewalk, or I think there's going to be one, maybe I saw some roadwork signs. I'm like, when, or how many other people, how many other sidewalks in front of me? How would you get that information easily?
Yeah, so again, I'm not in transportation planning, but I can sort of speak on their behalf. So yes, in the transportation master plan, in that first phase of the active transportation planning projects, they have identified sort of the listing of proposed projects in sort of phases. They kind of had sort of phase 1 projects, phase 2 projects, and phase 3 in terms of priorities. And then so yes, you can go find those online on the city's website under the transportation master plan. The integrated projects, and perhaps Bruce can sort of speak to that is sort of a different sort of category of when streets are being renewed for the underground sewers and water mains and like that. And that's when we try to take opportunities that come up to also add in infrastructure as part of those projects. So there is sort of a long list of planned infrastructure renewal. And on the city's website, you can also sort of see the phasing of some of those renewal projects. And then, like I said, the city looks for opportunities to add things through those opportunities, through those avenues.
Yeah, I can add, it's difficult outside of those pedestrian plans to kind of understand where we're going to layer those opportunities on. So a little difficult to decipher that when those renewal projects that are really driven by generally underground needs, our policy is to put the sidewalks in. Difficult to know in those budget books which of those renewal and projects actually already have a sidewalk versus a new one. So that is difficult to figure out. Now, we have a pretty proactive communication with involved with any of our projects. So when those projects, become into the design phase, we certainly reach out to the community, and that's when we really engage on how we're layering on those opportunities. And then we hear from the community about what those needs are and tailor the work accordingly.
There's ever going to be a sidewalk in an area. I'm like, just grabbing that information simply. Just an intersection and telling, getting some information, that would be much more useful than telling me it's in a transportation master plan that's going to be under review. And then after that review, there's going to be another transportation master plan after that one. So I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get the information really.
So I don't mind answering that. So you're right. I think we can all agree that the city has a lot of different, well, I've heard it called the city is a pair of pants with multiple pockets. And so, the infrastructure folks have a list of construction projects that's found on the website, and they have sort of a forecast of, I think out to how many years is your forecast that you can see on your map?
Yeah, it'll depend a little bit, but we have if you get on the website, there's a construction interactive map that shows the planned projects, and generally they're out, even 3 to 5 years. So if you'll see an orange line on your road, that'll show that project is kind of in play.
That's right. So there's that list. And then there is the transportation master plan list, because that is from a planning perspective, building connectivity. So less so about these sort of spot infrastructure renewals that give an opportunity to add to the network. These are going to be standalone projects for sidewalks. So one of the ones that's in the 2026 budget, for example, that I've been advocating for is the Nanaimo sidewalk. So that sidewalk is going to build connectivity to, down Nanaimo, which is a very busy road and very dark at night. But they're only going to build a sidewalk on it. They're not going to tear all the stuff out. That's the Transportation Master Plan initiative. Then they've got another pocket that is the missing links pocket. So that's when they're looking out and they're seeing, geez, there's this gap, and maybe we can put a few panels in, or put a 500-meter span. I don't know if you have money for 500 meters. I don't really know exact, but it's a different pocket. And then we have panel replacements. So if you guys ever see an area where you've got particular panels of sidewalk that are looking really poor, like Briar Green has seen on Ash Grove and Meadowbank, there's a different pocket for replacing panels. And please let us know if you see panels that are in dire repair. So one of the ways that you can get the best information often to scan for all of that is our office. I do have, a responsibility to translate, all these pockets to you. So don't ever hesitate if you ever just want to put that in an email to us and say, give me a forecast. Now, things change, budgets change, things get pushed out, but we can give you a general idea by nagging all these people. Okay? All right, great. So now virtual questions so that they don't feel left out. Heather?
Absolutely. So we've got a great question here from Jeff. He says, what is the current state of the rezoning proposal of Centerpoint Park from leisure zone to recreation zone?
Okay, so the Centerpoint Park has a, so back it up. So the whole city is undergoing a comprehensive zoning bylaw review, because the city has not, so all your parcels of land have a code that says what's allowed to be built on that piece of property, and it includes all parks, and it includes all, public, private, whatever. Every parcel of land has a code, and those codes are the same codes as pre-amalgamation, where Gloucester had some codes and Nepean had some codes and Ottawa had some codes, which means that there was no harmonization. So what you could do on a piece of property in Gloucester, even if the property looked just like a piece in Nepean, didn't necessarily have the same code. There was like 166,000 different combinations of codes. Oh, 400 and some. All right, I'm getting fact checked here. So 400 and some different codes, 1,000 codes. So bananas, right? So we've been undergoing this comprehensive zoning bylaw review to shrink that and condense it into a certain number of core codes that keep things simple for you as a homeowner, for builders, whatever. But that also means that we're rezoning or, harmonizing zones for public spaces like Centrepoint Park. So the concern from the Centrepoint community has been that we are going to be allowing for more different kinds of buildings to be built on Centrepoint Park. It's not, that won't happen, because what goes in a public park is guided by the park's master plan. So, the city of Ottawa does not have a mandate to build a movie theater. Like, they're just not going to do that. That's not a public asset. However, if a private park land wanted to build a movie theater, maybe they could. And so this zone code issue has given some serious anxiety. So in working with the Centrepoint Community Association, I'll be moving a motion at committee is it December? It is. I lost a couple weeks there in November, but it's this month to put the zone code as green space. To give some encouragement for the community that wants to ensure that Centrepoint Park always remains a green park. So I will be moving that motion to support the community. We have put some extra notes in there to sort of talk about the guidance of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan to demonstrate that, there's a lot of layering policies that govern what's built on public land, but that is what's happening with Centrepoint Park. Okay. All right. Okay. Yes.
Let's be quick. So my name is Pat, and my question is more like on the finances side, but I'm aware that the city and their long-range financial plan for tax-supported services is looking at about $10.8 billion funding gap over the next 10 years. I'm concerned with that because it's a gap. So the real ask is around 30 billion. We're planning to fund 20, and there's 10 billion that we're not paying for. So that's like rinks that aren't being repaired, pools that aren't being repaired, roads that are not being repaired, all these things not being prepared. So I'm planning to live here for a while with my kids, and my understanding is that long-range financial plan that identifies how we're going to address this gap was due legally in just this past summer. And I'm told now that it's not going to be presented to city councillors until next spring. And we're voting on a budget right now. So I guess I'll just simplify my question. Sorry, I'll preface it, just one last preface, is that presumably this long-range financial plan was in its final stages of revision in the spring, only 6 months ago. And only last minute, we decided not to publish it. So I feel like we know the numbers, and just we're not presenting them. Why don't we know the numbers? Thank you.
So we don't have a budget person here tonight. I'm sorry, we don't have the treasurer, given that it's budget season, but we can absolutely find out the reasons for that and get them back to you. I think it's fair to say that, I would share that concern that we have sort of a cliff of expenses that is coming up. But I would like to say also that's not unique to Ottawa. That's part of the challenge and why we need to talk about the provincial and federal government's role in funding cities. So I used to sit on the board of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and their big ask was to create a different funding framework for cities, because right now for every 8 cents on the dollar, we get 8 cents of collected tax revenue on the dollar, and the rest goes to the provincial and federal governments. But our responsibility in terms of infrastructure greatly exceeds that kind of investment. So I know that, and Tim is the first vice president of the FCM. And so we are, I'm not on the board anymore, I passed it on, but trying to get the federal and provincial government to understand that what they need to do is offer unrestricted funds to cities to do this. Part of the challenge is provinces, and you can't cut a ribbon on this stuff, right? The province and the feds, they want to do a program or a project so that they do a building retrofit or they do something and they fund it and you get to cut a ribbon. You can say, look at the investment that we've made. But with this, it's like repairing and maintaining things. And so if we were to not ask for more tax money, but maybe do a different cost or revenue sharing with cities, right? So maybe of the taxes that are collected, maybe the cities could get an extra % across the country to do this type of work at the you know, master plan level where we know what the costs are. That would be very encouraging, but we have not been able to be successful from the provincial and federal government on that type of unrestricted funding at this time. So I will be sure to try to get those information. No, you know what? That you found the gap. Very embarrassing, very embarrassing. But we can definitely get you that information and we'll share it out with everyone. Okay, so now over to that aisle.
My name is Guy. I have a question about the way sidewalks are built these days for safety measures. The other day I was driving on Navajo and there's a, what do you call them, bulb out sidewalk. And it's in a curve actually. At night, visibility not great. There's a bike on my side. There's a car coming the other way. It was an extremely close call not to hit anything. So the goal of those bulb outs seems to be to increase safety, but I sure didn't feel safe at that moment. So that's one occasion. I'm a resident of Klein Crescent, which is going to be going under like all the sewer and all that stuff done in a year and a half or 2 years, something like that. And I look at the design. Right now, the street on average is 7.5 meters across. And in some places in the design is going to be 6 meter with bulb out sidewalks. Okay. So the other day I saw a big truck, a tree trimming truck with a trailer in tow. And then there was a garbage truck. It was garbage pickup day. Garbage truck could barely squeeze by. So what happens if that happens in a 6 meter wide street? We cancel the garbage collection that day? I don't know. And the other thing is part of the development to get this beautiful sidewalk with bulb out, we are losing about 60% of our street parking. So that's ugly. On top of that, some of us will have our laneway reduced and some of us will lose a parking space. So if you have 2 cars, now you can only park 1. If you both rely on your cars for work, either you find a new job or you move. So those are extremely disturbing. And we live in a very quiet crescent. There are kids playing on the street. They're on scooters. They're on bikes, 6 meters, truck. Just today I was looking, coming out here, there's a house they're building very quickly on Whitmore. There was about 6 trucks working on it. It was hard to go on a regular width street right now. So can somebody explain to me what's the idea here behind those safety measures? And I argue that they're not safer at all.
So perhaps I could tee up both Heidi to talk about the traffic calming standards. And then maybe I could ask Bruce to talk about road renewal and standard widths. Thanks.
Sure. So I can't comment on that project specifically because I'm not involved in it, and so Bruce can take that over. But generally speaking, as part of our policies, our road safety action plan of trying to achieve our sort of Vision Zero goals of reducing fatalities and major injuries, we have a policy to redesign our local streets to try to achieve a 30-kilometer speed limit on those streets. And that is, there's definitely a lot of research out there in terms of the safety of our vulnerable road users, everybody out on the road, those kids who are playing on the road, the people who are scootering on the road, of the impacts of a collision depending of the speeds that people are going at on those streets. So that's our goal. So then when we go to renew those streets, we look at opportunities to add some traffic calming. But then there's no doubt that there's no sort of magic solution to add that traffic calming. And then so we definitely sort of have to review each street individually. there's sometimes we may add speed humps. Sometimes we may sort of narrow things a little bit to sort of help reduce the speeds that way. Sometimes, adding the sidewalk alone is enough sort of a little of a reduction. It definitely does go through a formal design process that reviews all of those various dimensions, checks turning templates for large trucks and things like that to make sure that those can be accommodated. But that's the principle of as following our city policies of making streets more livable for everybody who uses those streets now and in the future, that we want to sort of reduce the speeds on those streets and keep it safe for the children to continue playing out there.
Yes, so I guess Whitmore, Klein, Sherman is kind of the new integrated project in the ward. There's been some of that design review with the community already. We do recognize that there are some voices that really think that that road still should be pretty wide. The road width does get narrow, and it certainly does have some impact on snow removal and operations. We've been really quite successful at narrowing those roads in order that we can still fit in, a sidewalk, make those improvements, but also respect the front yards and generally the trees. So we don't want to be in a situation where, we have a 8.5-meter road and we need to put a sidewalk in. And for example, that has other impacts on the tie-ins to the private properties and certainly the tree removals. So, there's the frontage aspect, and then, the governing direction and studies out there really do suggest that overly wide roads do promote those speeding cars. So we generally will put the sidewalk in, we'll bring those roads down to a little narrower profile where we still work with Public Works to make sure that they're still serviceable. I do understand that when you have two large vehicles, for example, they have to try to navigate that. We're not unaware of that. They always do seem to get by one another. They are impeded a little bit under those designs. And then the traffic calming is the other place where if you can bring those speed limits down to 30 kilometers an hour, your critical accident situations drastically decrease. We have had some neighborhoods that we've worked with where they've said this is already very slow. You're trying to fix a non-problem. In those situations, we have modified some of the traffic calming measures, and we've only done that based on going out and doing some traffic studies. And we've done that more and more on the last integrated project since we brought that kind of toolbox in of those measures. So when we do those traffic studies, if we're already at 30 kilometers an hour due to the nature of that residential area, then that's when we will pull some of those measures back.
Okay, so I just want Quentin to address the idea of snow removal because I know that that's also an anxiety in the area, and we do have his expertise here to talk about that experience.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor, and thanks for the question. So certainly we do work very closely with our partners in planning, transportation planning, and infrastructure services. Our winter operations, snow removal specifically, it is guided by our winter maintenance quality standards. And prioritize that way. But we do know that we do have streets throughout the city that definitely have pinch points and pressure points as far as narrowness. And certainly my team does prioritize those areas and knows to prioritize those areas throughout the winter so that we are opening them up, making them safe and making them passable throughout the winter season.
So a couple other sort of contexts for this is, again, to bring in the provincial government. So back in 2023, the provincial government passed Bill 23, which means that every serviceable lot is allowed to have 3 units as of right. And so, although we do see many of these neighborhoods that have a single family home, that is not the new normal. The province ripped that Band-Aid off years ago. So in that sense, we will see greater intensification through our neighborhoods. It will be a slow roll. Like it's not going to happen overnight, but generally speaking, this is a new permission for people when they sell their home to sort of have those considerations. So we do, when it comes to these types of decisions, the policies that the city has put in place are really trying to look at now and into the future. So 75 years from now, even 30 years from now, I do anticipate that our neighborhood will look very different. And so right now, putting these types of measures in is less than 2% of the overall project cost. It's actually the cheapest time that we can ever put them in. And I think that actually is a relevant decision point. So that being said, when it comes to losing a parking space in a laneway, certainly I can sympathize, or a driveway, I can certainly sympathize with that. And I'll turn our attention again to the comprehensive zoning bylaw review. I've been really active on trying to talk about parking issues in these older neighborhoods because, the reality is people have cars and they have to get around. We shouldn't be, imagining that people are suddenly going to poof not have their cars anymore when we, decrease parking minimums. So one of the proposals in the draft that's going to be at committee on December 17th is that now what used to not be permitted, which is called front yard parking, which is where you can widen your driveway, that is now something that is being considered as being a permission. And so I would really encourage you to take a look at that because it is controversial. Some people do not want to have, more people widening their driveways, while others consider it to be a very helpful and convenient thing to be able to do. And of course, that's a case-by-case basis for a homeowner. That's not something that anyone would prescribe, but these are sort of the interlocking trade-offs that we have to think about. So I'll turn your attention to that as well, because I do think it's important to consider if you've not looked at some of the zoning provisions, it's a good time. We've been talking about it in our newsletter for several years. And so it should be something that you're aware of. Okay, so back to virtual. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've got a question here from Paul. Flex stakes in the middle of the road calm traffic for only about 7 months of the year. What measures are you considering to discourage neighborhood speeding during the rest of the year? Thanks, Paul.
Yes, so traffic calming, very sensitive topic for everybody. And then so yes, flex stakes is one measure that we have to try to get in some quick, low cost measures to help improve things. Certainly speeding tends to be higher in those non-winter months than winter months. And so that's one way of, in advance of doing anything sort of more permanent to that street, that we can have an impact on that street and with the speeding when people are more apt to be out there using that street for other purposes than just driving and making it through. There's a whole suite of different types of measures on depending on the individual streets that we can look at that perhaps centerline flex stakes have been implemented for a while, and then we can start looking at other alternatives for those individual streets through our various different programs that implement traffic calming. We're undergoing a large review right now about both of our traffic calming programs to try to streamline the processes and open up potential new opportunities for different types of measures being funded by either of those programs. And frankly, one of the things that we are looking at is trying to move away from less of the temporary stuff to more permanent options. But in the meantime, flex stakes are still very impactful on many of our streets.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. And certainly that's been something that councillors have been actively looking for is, the temporary stuff. I think when we hear temporary traffic calming, we kind of always imagine it being temporary leading to permanent, but it means temporary because it's seasonal, and that's confusing. So I think that we've seen actually councillors ask for procurement of speed humps more often than flex stakes. And so that's changed. We had speed humps installed this year in College Ward on David Drive, on Cobden, on Monterey, and no, that was in a different project. So these were my temporary traffic calming measures. Anyway, there's at least 3 locations that, were delayed somewhat because of procurement reasons. They were bundling, the speed humps for better cost efficiencies. So anyway, so this is something I'm really glad to hear the review is still coming. The review has been pending since last spring. So we are all anxiously awaiting for the review to conclude. If the province can stop throwing you curveballs about all kinds of other reasons why you should be running around with a chicken with your head cut off. So, okay, so thank you very much, Paul, virtually. And now we're going to go on. So we're going to go to people who haven't spoken yet. Okay, so please go ahead.
Hi, Elizabeth White Cenac, a one-year resident of College Ward, as well as a new homeowner. I'm here with my neighbor Anne, who has lived in the neighborhood, I believe, 30 years or so. So we actually live on Baseline Road in the 1500 block, and will be directly affected by the BRT project. Vehicle speeds on this section regularly exceed 80 kilometers an hour. I wish it was 65. And our homes are already positioned uncomfortably close to this high-risk corridor. While our property is not identified for full expropriation, like some of our neighbors, the current design would bring that roadway even closer, intensifying the safety, the noise, and livability concerns for residents. It would eliminate our single parking spot as well. This stretch of Baseline functions as a residential area and a community, not a high-speed corridor. The project should reflect that reality. We're asking the city to reevaluate the design of this segment and consider lower impact alternatives, such as a single transit priority lane similar to Woodruff that can support transit goals without undermining our neighborhood. We're requesting that the city reassess this portion of the project using updated traffic, speed, and safety data to ensure that final design supports both transit efficiency and the long-term viability of our homes.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for being here and for speaking on behalf of your neighbor as well. So yes, so the Baseline BRT environmental study predates me by several years. So certainly, as it has been mentioned, you know, the funding for that is contingent on other levels of government putting in. So you have my commitment, if I am still in office when it actually comes through, because of course it is still kind of a question mark, to reevaluate and to look at those designs a lot more carefully. It is a project in the city that has more studies done than other transit corridors, but definitely has to be considered really closely. And you're not the only residents of Baseline that have said that. So I really appreciate you being here. And again, you know, in a world of hypotheticals, let's talk about it. Okay, yeah, and thank you for sharing it. So where are we now? Okay, Scott.
My name is Scott McGregor. I'm 15 years in the ward and lifelong Ottawan. We talked about the development of the plan for the transportation master plan, as well as the city's official plan, as being a slow roll. It takes 5 to 10 years for these things to go from planning to actual effect. And my thought is that we haven't really gone back to the citizenry and asked them what they think about the various aspects of it. For me personally, I consider traffic calming to be enraging. I've on several occasions been forced to go across the solid yellow on Navajo to avoid a vehicle that was pulling out of a lane or a bus that was blocked by a garbage truck. And I had to go into the opposing lane because there was one of those annoying signs in the middle of the road that precluded me just getting by barely and leaving room for another car to get by. So my argument would be, in coming back to the question of budget and the shortfall, I think, in speaking with my neighbors, and I live on Sherman, so I'm part of the development that's proposed for 26-27. None of my neighbors want the sidewalk. Zero. In our associated neighborhood, the speed bumps and the bump outs and the signage are all very distracting and very difficult. So my question is, can we look at the question of safety through other lenses than simply the impact of a collision, right? I've spoken with paramedics, I've spoken with firemen, or persons, and they've told me that they don't want to be named because they fear the consequences of voicing an opinion that runs counter to the esteemed panel's expert work. But they've said that response times are slowing. The time to get somebody to the hospital, Queens McCarlton, by ambulance is longer, and it may make the difference between life and death. This is a safety issue. The number of signs that are going up in the neighborhood, a plethora of them, at great expense, which could be subsidizing this shortfall. Distracted driving is a consequence. Trying to make sense of what all these different signs mean as they suddenly spontaneously appear. So my question would be, can we put these ideas to a referendum of the electorate? Because in the fifth engagement survey report, 464 people responded out of 1,046,000 according to 21 census, according to the documents that the city puts out. That's underrepresentation. And it reflected the viewpoints of a minority and very active vocal group. I don't feel, and this is my question, how do we engage the citizenry who at this point, from my personal experience, feel that their needs are not being listened to?
Okay, so lots to unpack there. I think, first of all, is to go back to Chair Tierney's point where the Transportation Master Plan is reviewed on a regular basis. We did have, several rounds of consultations for this Transportation Master Plan, both online and in person in several locations across the city multiple times. So at this point, the Transportation Master Plan is a document that supports the official plan that is ratified by the province of Ontario. And so that process has been completed now for this current official plan. So the cycle of legislation, or the cycle to review the legislation, is what had been committed at the PWIC committee, of which I am a member, and I supported the motion to review the Transportation Master Plan within 2 years so that we can have updated information. And you have my commitment to share that information in my newsletter, as I have been for the last 3 years. So if you're not currently signed up for my newsletter, I strongly suggest you do so. There's also a way for you to get direct newsletters from the City of Ottawa through their newsletter subscription sign up. So if you're not signed up for that, I would strongly suggest that you get involved that way as well. So there are going to be multiple opportunities to engage. Whether or not something can be considered a referendum item is actually also not really within the city's purview. It would have to go up a chain. I wouldn't be able to add something to the ballot. I can certainly get better information about how something is added to the ballot and share that out as a point here to make sure that question gets answered. And then finally, with respect to this specific project, feedback is still being received by the project manager, and the final design for this project is not being presented until spring 2026. And so there's still a lot of opportunity for feedback. There are certain governing policies that are in place for that time, but when it comes to, for example, the on-street parking and the pressures on that, that's something I had committed in our session to review with the project manager, and we hope to have some information on that brought forward again. So I think there are a lot of moments to engage, and I just would strongly suggest that we continue to build the relationship and be in communication about it, so that you can have the best information at the time that you need. So now we're going to go over to this. Yeah, so I see Stephen there from Copeland Park. We haven't heard anyone from Copeland Park yet, so it would be great to hear from you. Thank you.
Hi, I think it's more of just a follow-up to what he was talking about and what you guys are talking about here. I live in Bel Air, Copeland Park as well. I'm excited for sidewalks. I have children, and my children walk to school, and there's no sidewalks. People are driving fast down all these streets in all the neighborhood. And I'm more concerned about the safety of the children. It's a dark neighborhood at night. Cars come ripping around, and I don't want my kids. I have teenagers too. They're walking around at night, and I am very excited for sidewalks in our neighborhood. I think it's the best thing we can do. So let it be known there are other people in the neighborhood with different perspectives, and we will be living in the neighborhood for a long time. So.
Right, so we've got a question here from Melinda. We have many cyclists in this ward trying to reach the Trans Canada Trail or the Parkway, but there aren't any safe bike lanes to actually get there. Many must take major roads like Robertson or Holly Acres, which carry many safety risks. So the sub-questions are, what are the top cycling infrastructure priorities for this ward in the next couple of years? And what are the timelines for these?
Am I dying? Oh, there I am. Not dying up here, although that's also happening a little bit, but no, I mean my microphone. So what are the top cycling projects? Now, I apologize, I do not have them all on hand, and I think it's worth saying that the province has also kind of killed a little bit of that. So the province has recently passed a bill to suggest that you cannot remove a cycling lane or a traffic lane for a cycling lane, which I know will impact the current design of the Center Point traffic calming project, which is a disappointment because driving on Center Point Drive has greatly exceeded speed limits, again, since before I was elected. And that project has been delayed several times for further consultation. So we should be able to have a better understanding of that area in 2026, hopefully, as part of the report that's coming forward. When it comes to the Holly Acres Junction, that is a disaster. And there's really no two ways about that. That's shared both between myself and Ward 7, Councillor Teresa Kavanaugh's ward, who's an avid cyclist. But that one's been a bit of a hot mess because the jurisdiction within that, and maybe, I won't make Rail talk about cycling, but the jurisdiction within the Holly Acres site is MTO, because it's got the highway there. And then it's the city of Ottawa for some stretches of it. And then some of it is owned by the project, which is, or the rail project. So the bosses of that strip of land is Kev, the project manager, the construction manager for the rail. So anytime you want to do any work in there, you've got three masters. And the masters don't always talk very well. So when the city of Ottawa is trying to complete the cycling project under there and get the connectivity back, they have to do a lot of staging permissions with each one of these groups. And it's been very challenging for those residents. So I really empathize with that. I believe that construction around that area, Richard, is intended to be done. Jump in anytime.
So the work that's being undertaken right now at Holly Acres would be considered to be a temporary situation just to get us through the winter. And we are, as you say, there are definitely challenges with working with the various jurisdictions. We have biweekly meetings with the MTO, and I would say that there is some positive movement in terms of like the permanent means for pedestrian and cycling access across the Holly Acres Bridge. So I would be happy to provide more information in the format of drawings through yourself to whichever constituents are kind of interested in more detail. I don't have it at my fingertips now, but we could certainly provide more information. And I can talk about the work that's happening as part of the rail project, but of course that's just a little bit in the middle. And then I know that there are other projects to the south in terms of the cycling facility kind of further south on Holly Acres and other projects planned for the north.
That's right. So those cycling projects are part of the transportation master plan, and there's sort of two phases of priority for that. So because we had an opportunity to kind of banter there, I was able to remember one of the cycling projects that would be really nice to see done within the next 10 years, but I'm not sure if it'll be the next 10, is La Perriere to Clyde, Woodward La Perriere to Clyde. Woodward is used by cyclists all the time. And again, there's a very big width there that you could put a painted bike lane in. I don't know why painted bike lanes take so long. I really don't know, but that is the way it works. So trying to get cyclists up Woodward and then across Clyde to La Perriere at that T-junction, that T-junction is also a disaster for drivers, right? Because you have such wide lanes there that you often have two folks pulling up at do you guys know this intersection up behind the old Canadian Tire, right? So ostensibly it's supposed to be a single file. There's no two lanes there, but because it's so wide at the intersection, you'll often have people that want to turn right, and then you'll have folks that come up on the other side or vice versa. actually, come up on the other side and go beside them. And then you've got like multiple cars in a T. It's very stressful as a driver. I've seen lots of things happen there. So the bike lanes cutting off a piece of that width will actually help to solve some of that driver confusion. So that's going to be, I think, a really good investment, but I'm not sure exactly when that comes. So that's one I can think of offhand, but certainly you can write our office and we can list those out for you. Okay. All right. Very good. Here, someone we haven't heard from yet.
Hi, Terry Hutchins, residents of City View for 45 years. In terms of traffic calming, Premier and Mayor Doug Ford eliminating the traffic control lights. I saw a car doing 60 to 70 on Meadowlands today in front of St. Greg's School in a clear 40 zone. So just to comment on that. Second comment is on the flex sticks. I'm wondering if you put them in, you should be consulting with neighbors in that neighborhood. For example, on Cordova, they put flex sticks on Lauda, but not on Cordova at the stop sign where no one stops. Residents on Lauda know how dangerous it is and do come to a full stop because they know they're going to get run over. They run that stop sign all the time. So the flex sticks should actually be on Cordova as a stop as opposed to on Lauda, because a lot of people know that. My main question though is about drainage. I've had flooding. I live at Lauda Avenue, at the end of Lauda Avenue by Algonquin College. I've had flooding in my basement twice. It's improved since they put the big drainage ditch in Cordova. But my question is, have you consulted with Algonquin around drainage? Because bordering my property, there's a berm between myself and Algonquin, and also Algonquin owns a property opposite me that will flood in heavy rain or in the spring and be at least a foot deep, if not more. And I have to go out and dig a ditch myself to drain it. So I'm wondering if Algonquin has been consulted around how the new drainage ditches are going to work. I live at the low end of Lauda, so the water will drain towards me. And I want to make sure that, again, it doesn't end up all on my property, which is happening right now. The other question is around that is I have interlocking brick and a good culvert I put in at the end of my driveway. Will the interlocking brick be replaced back when the ditches are redone? And also just in terms of drainage on our neighborhood, I know they're talking about, I know there's a lot of stuff, but I'm putting it all together. The drainage question again relates to building paved parking lots in backs of buildings. Our neighborhood has drainage problems and I understand that there's some open ideas about putting parking lots in the back of houses and paving it. And I think there's city engineers who are against it. I'm not sure where the city stands on this now in my neighborhood, but drainage is a huge issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Terry. So maybe Bruce, could you comment on some of the experiences that City View is seeing for flooding?
Certainly. City View, I don't know where we're at with the Algonquin issue. That has certainly come up at the public meetings between us and asset management. We have made that commitment to engage them. Obviously, it's a private property, and John might be able to speak to it, but they have certain obligations. I think a lot of it has to do with their snow storage and just even adding extra water. And we have heard from those properties backing on that the main drainage issue there is not actually necessarily from some of the infill and some of the other road work, but it is from that property. And we did make that commitment to engage to understand how that might work with the design that we've come up with. I think the next issue really there was your specific driveway. We'd have to take a look at that, but generally we're going to go in and put new culverts in at the right elevation as part of the overall drainage plan for that neighborhood, so that going forward with increased infill and everything else, that there's a drainage system in that neighborhood that works in the long term. And, I can hook you up with our project manager to discuss exactly what that reinstatement would look like in the front of your property.
I used interlock brick.
Yeah.
What about backyard paving?
Yeah. Yeah, the interlock, like I say, it'd depend on exactly what that frontage is. If it's generally a conforming frontage, we would generally put that back. There's some places that the existing landscape doesn't really fit with our design, so that might have to be modified. So I can't give you a blanket, will you get exactly what you want? Because we are actually modifying those frontages. But, you know, we want to respect the neighborhood. It's impactful what we're doing there with that drainage design. And we certainly don't want to add any, you know, we don't want to layer on any increase inconvenience. So we're going to work with the residents to find the right solution there. Keep the ditches not overly deep, but as deep as they need to be. So, so that's where we are there.
Yeah. So yeah, with the way that project will roll out is that, you know, it is over 10 years. And so every year, those addresses that are within that particular project phase will have a smaller meeting directly with that project manager so that you can have a very detailed conversation about what to expect. And I recently sent out a letter to all residents in that area to say, I am going to fight and, oh, you printed it. Okay, well, then I better say the right thing. But the idea is I don't want anybody to find out any surprises when the road crews show up. That is not a good feeling. No one likes surprises. And so I'll be working diligently, if you'll still have me, to make sure that that coordination and communication is straight, because it is going to be a very impactful project. Yes. Okay, very good. And then when it comes to the front yard, rear yard parking, I don't know who might be able to talk about that. Do you want to try it, Kirsten?
Yes, I can just respond a bit, and I might turn it over to John. I think, you know, we've seen a lot of changes through legislation, and increasingly property owner can put more and more housing on their lot without the benefit of a formal development application. So we really rely on the zoning bylaw amendment, which does require minimum soft landscape area with both within the front yard and in the backyard, which is, you know, primarily for stormwater management. And then through committee of adjustment applications, we do have an opportunity. In this neighborhood, that's about all we actually have, like through a formal development application. That's the only way we can look at it that in depth. But if somebody comes in for a building permit, they will go to John's team. John's team does do a comprehensive review from the zoning bylaw perspective, and then they do have a grading plan review. But we are fully aware that there is an issue, so we are very diligent in those reviews.
I have to say you got me a Lotta when you said that. My grandmother lived on Lotta, and I thought it would be topical. 37, 2 stories, detached garage in the back. Before I came to this meeting, I drove down Lotta just to make sure it was still there, because I know how much that neighborhood has turned over since I was a kid, and how many of the ditches have been infilled, and how the homes now go seemingly lot line to lot line. And I think if you project in another 40 years, to Councillor Johnson's comment, you know, maybe there'll be more multi-unit stock in there, and it will look totally different once again. So I really appreciate your comments, and I'm very aware of them. And exactly what Kirsten said, you know, we do, as part of a building permit review for a new home, request a grading and drainage plan, servicing plan, excavation plans, to make sure that even during construction for a new home, that everything meets the intent and the requirements of the building code, the zoning bylaw, and other applicable law. I will say that if you have a building permit or a building in your area that's ongoing, don't suffer in silence. It's actually quite a complicated regulatory framework, with no thanks to the government, the provincial government. The rules are changing, you know, with the direction of the wind. So I appreciate that response is highly generic and whatnot. But if there are concerns, you know, please bring it to someone's attention, to Councillor Johnson's attention, and it will go to the right hands. Yeah, go ahead, please.
And honestly, without having the details, being able to look into that case, that investigation, it's harder for me to provide comment. And again, without knowing the details, I can't provide comment. I can follow up with you at a later date. I'd be happy to, but I would have to see the address and look at the notes just to confirm first.
Hey, so yeah, and I guess just to mention that, stormwater management regulations are different now, even just in the last 2 years than they were 4 years ago because of some of these issues. So now new builds have to prove that they're not putting more water into the ground after at a natural rate than they were prior to building, which means that they may have to have on-site stormwater storage, whether that's under the building or on top of the building. There are concerns that that type of investment will actually increase the cost of housing, but it was well worth the city putting in that type of regulation with the work of industry to try and make it so that these cities are, or these neighborhoods are not going to suffer unduly across residents. So. Okay, so we're at 8:30. So I really appreciate everyone coming tonight. And, I wanted to say thank you so much for your your kind and respectful engagement. If you had additional questions, we won't be able to stay in this room because the rental is over, but we can move out into the lobby. I'm sure many folks will have to go home, but you can follow up with 311 or collegeward@ottawa.ca. So thank you so much for giving your time up tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody.